welcome, my friend, to the 7th episode of the Spring 2022 season of Minnesota Gardening Podcast, where we're working on growing your own meals. And we have been having, this is the third of 3 episodes out of our 9-episode season, where we talk heavily about seed starting. We get you all the way from starting the seeds in episode 5 to working through growing those seeds, what they require for heat and light and all different things along those lines in episode 6. In this episode 7, we take it to the next level. We take those toddler plants and get them out into the real world and growing and just doing really well. And I am just so honored to have Kelsey Love with us here for this 3rd episode to talk all through seed starting. And I hope you are following Kelsey at Heirloomista on Instagram, and make sure to sign up for her newsletter as well. It's really, really great. And if you're liking all this content, if you're liking the podcast, please consider joining the Minnesota Gardening Club. It's just a great group of people that I have so much fun with. You can go to minnesotagardeningclub.com and you can get 2 weeks free of the Minnesota Gardening Club, and I know you will love it. So with that, here is the final episode of this 3 nuts and bolts episodes. We still have 2 more after this for the season, but this is the final about seed starting specifically. So enjoy. All right, we have our 3rd and final episode here with Kelsey Love, who is the Heirloomista on Instagram. And we've today talked through, if you're listening just to this episode, make sure we have a whole season about seed starting and spring gardening here that's going on for the 2nd season of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. And we are in the 3rd of 3 episodes with Kelsey Love, talking this one about taking our little toddler plants and getting them used to being outside, and how we do transplanting and what we need to think about that way. So, Kelsey, before we get into that, where else can people find you? Where can they purchase your vegetables and your amazing stuff that you grow on the farm?
Yeah, great. You can find me, of course, on the interwebs at heirloomista.com. And also, I think I'm the one and only Heirloomista on the interwebs. So any social media platform. But another great thing is I have a farm shop here on my farm, and I give tours and invite people out. Part of what I do is of being accessible to people who want to have an experience on the farm, or if they want to learn or just see where their food comes from, whether that's veggies, herbs, or meat. So people are absolutely welcome to come out to the farm. You can find more information at heirloomista.com.
And you are located north of the metro, but I don't know how far north.
Yeah, I'm an hour north of the Twin Cities. So straight shot on 35 and jump off on the North Branch exit. I'm really close to Wild River
awesome.
State Park. So I always encourage people, come hiking for the day or go check out Franconia. It's all my backyard. So
yeah, Franconia is so cool.
It's good
such a
for
fun,
anyone.
weird place.
Yeah, it's great. And they have classes and stuff now too. So they have this great new building where you can go check stuff out and take classes, and it's just great for all ages, and you can bring the dog and whatnot. So that's great.
Perfect. Yeah, I will put that in the show notes as well, because it's a day trip to Heirloomista's farm, so that's a beautiful thing. So now, so we've gotten our plants through these 3 episodes to being happy growing, hopefully happy growing plants that are now in need of transplanting and moving to the next stage of their life. So, what time of year should that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, generally, it's by temperature. So at this stage in the game, you have wonderful, healthy plants, and maybe they're inside, and you need to start thinking about putting them outside. And that's not a direct process. There's a way to kind of ease into it. But you want to make sure that it's definitely above freezing overnight. There's a standard rule for tomatoes. Once it's above 50 overnight, it's fine to plant them outside. And this changes. So, I'm sure you're going to be really dialed into the weather now that you're an avid home gardener, and you're going to be noticing the things that come with the season relating to weather. But yeah, it can't be below freezing. It's best if it's over 40 or 45 degrees out here on the farm. I'm a bit more rough and tough with my plants because Again, I'm a seed saver. Like if it's not going to make it, you know, when it's a little tough, I probably don't want to keep it. But that doesn't mean that you can give it a bit more time and ease into it. So at this point, you probably have, like I said, nice, strong, healthy plant with multiple leaves on it and a nice, strong stem. And you want to think about getting it out into your raised bed or your garden or your container or whatever it is that you're going to plant it in. And like I said, make sure it's above 45 at night. And while you're getting up to that temperature, it does take time. So even if it's chilly at night, but it's warm during the day, you can start bringing your plants outside to start the process of hardening off. So it's a good way to transfer your plants outside. So essentially what you're doing is when we're inside growing our plants, we're kind of coddling them. You know, there's no wind in their hair and there's not strong sun on their leaves. So when they go outside, if you just put them outside without hardening them off, they might get a sunburn or they might get beat up by the wind, or like the difference in temperature might be too extreme and they might be stunted. So that is what this hardening off process is. You gradually bring your plants outside, maybe for a few hours a day, to make sure they're getting strong sunlight and they're experiencing wind. Because like I mentioned earlier, is these plants are regulating to their surroundings. And when we keep them inside with a highly predictable, like a highly controlled environment, there's nothing that they're really, not nothing, but they're regulating to fewer things than they will be when they're out in your garden. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they'll absolutely have to figure out a way to deal with stress. And this is hardening them off is an easier on-ramp for dealing with those stresses that they'll have to deal with.
Yep, definitely. So I think the standard rule is between 7 and 14 days where you start this process of bringing them outside and then you bring them back in. It's also a much cleaner process to water your plants outside than it is inside. But you can do that and you gradually add more each time. And at a certain point, you can just leave them outside before you transplant them, or you can just transplant them as long as the soil is warm enough.
And I know there are a lot of different thought processes as how intense or how invigorating this hardening off process should be. And I tend to fall very much along the same lines as you do, Kelsey, of it. I don't have time to, and most busy gardeners and busy folks don't have time to be pulling plants in and out once a day for an hour or that kind of thing. So when I do hardening off, I basically put, for a couple hours, just so they get used to wind and things, I put them on my deck in the shade on my deck so that they're not in full sunlight, but it's definitely stronger sun that time of year. Mm-hmm. And I just do 3 or 4 days, and then I just leave them outside unless it's going to get too cold. And then they're mostly outside until I transplant. So that's, I know, not the way a lot of very, I don't know, hardcore gardeners is the way to, but very proper gardeners do things. I tend to not do much that's proper in the gardening sense of things. It's what fits into my lifestyle and what fits into our ability to get things done. And so hardening off is something that I tend to not do as much of, and to do an easing in. If it's windy, make sure to bring the plants back in. If it's like super bright and sunny, don't leave them out in the sunshine because they will get sunburned and things. But I don't do a ton of hardening off, but it's important to make sure that those plants have that transition.
Right. To consider the process. Absolutely. I also don't have an intensive hardening off process. And it's simply because of scale and like how I grow things, because it's all in a greenhouse before it goes outside. So light isn't a factor, but wind absolutely is. But with the amount of things that I'm growing in a germination, propagation greenhouse, it's like we need to be making more space. And so sometimes they're just 30 flats of onions. You're going outside now and you're just going to be there forever.
Right.
But, there are plants that are much hardier than others. So obviously I would not throw all of my tomatoes outside and be like, okay, you're on your own. Those are delicate, finicky little buggers sometimes, but like definitely onions, broccoli, they're very, very hardy. I mean, onions can even take a freeze. They can take a few freezes. So if you forget your onions outside, you're okay. It took me a couple of years to I'm always pushing the limits of how cold is too cold, and the plants that I always experiment with are my shallots and my onions, because like I said, they can take a freeze. And as long as you don't touch them before they thaw out, they'll bounce back. So,
and there are a lot of things as well that can handle that especially in Minnesota, it's important to recognize that we have some things that are cold tolerant plants. I mean, they can't get to a super hard freeze or anything like that. But there are also a lot of things that we talked in the first episode about direct sowing of plants. And there's things that we can direct sow well before our theoretical last frost date of the year. Do you recommend people getting started early with things, or where do you go with that?
Yeah, if you are like just chomping at the bit, that soil's over 40 degrees, you can plant your peas, no problem. Just plant them an inch or so deep, water them. And peas take a long time to germinate. It might be a couple weeks. If you don't soak them. Sometimes you can soak seeds that take a longer time to germinate to speed up that process. But when it's that early in the year, I wouldn't soak anything. I wouldn't want to rush it any more than that. You can also plant carrots fairly early. I transplant my beets and my onions and shallots super early. And that's a function of time for me, like time management. I know that I have tons of things coming on in the near future that I'm going to have to clear my schedule to transplant, that are going to take a lot more energy of mine. And so I'm totally fine planting things like I said, the transplanting beets and alliums super early, even if it's still freezing at night, and it's been totally fine. And I'm trying to think of other seeds that I direct sow where you can do it well ahead of time. So peas, definitely. Carrots, absolutely. Radishes, I've noticed that if I plant them too early, even though they can take some deep cold, they don't grow as well. So
got it.
But carrots are really safe.
So how do you decide, and this is, I think from here on out, just going to be a conversation and me learning from you, but how do you decide, like beets? I have only ever direct sown beets. Do you start them early so that you've got early product, or do you start them early because it's best to start it early, or how does that work in your situation?
Yeah, so I start my first round of beets, I absolutely plant in flats in the greenhouse, and then I transplant them. That's simply a function of having multiple harvests, because I have a very small farm. I know a lot of people come out here and they're like, whoa, this is so much, but it is a working farm. And for me, this is my livelihood, and I need to diversify and expand my production as much as possible. And so what that looks like is trying to have as much as I can for as long as I can. And so you're working with the weather. And so that is like I said, beets can take a freeze. They're fine. That's what I've discovered. Is it good to continuously do that? No. But yeah. And they don't beets are one of the root crops you can transplant. I like to do it. What I've noticed is a lot of the weeds that I have here on the farm look similar to beets. And so it's just easier for me to transplant them just for weed competition. Yeah. And my soil's very light. So I also like to transplant as much as I can, simply because things just take longer to grow.
And when you transplant things, what what are important things for people to think about as they are transplanting into their garden when they're taking these babies that they've grown for a couple months here? Is do you loosen the soil all up beforehand? Do you leave the soil still and just dig a hole for them? What is the best way to do this from a I'm forgetting the word now. Biodynamic sort of lens.
Yeah, and I'm biodynamic or not, I mean, soil prep is huge. So for me, I use, I have a big composting system that I use. So I have a lot of composted cow manure. So in the springtime, what that looks like is I am incorporating tons and tons of cow manure into my beds. So I dump that in, and then if I have plenty of time, I will use my broad fork to kind of mix the soil in with the compost. If I don't have a lot of time, I use my BCS tractor. But at a home scale, add your compost or your soil amendments, or if you don't have any, that's okay too. Just make sure you break up the soil a bit. If you think about these roots these plants that you're going to be planting, you want their roots to be welcomed and kind of like settle into the groove. So part of that is offering them this wonderful, fluffy bed of soil, instead of like just digging a hole and plopping them in, because the looser the soil is, the more the roots can work their way into it, as well as water and all the things that you want kind of traveling around the soil to access the roots for plant growth.
Right. I've been experimenting I have raised bed gardening is the way I do things. And so my soil is already really loose and airy, and we top dress with compost each year, but I'm experimenting more and more with not tilling anything at all. Yeah. Just to keep my fungus friends happy underneath of there. And is that scalable? Like how does that work into your operations, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I've been trying to get away from using my tractor as much as possible. That's more for environmental reasons I don't want to purchase any more petrochemicals than I absolutely have to. Obviously at a field scale, I like farm production. It's the tractors and motors and things are like part of life here. But because of my scale, I'm able to do a lot more handwork and less invasive practices. So talking about the broad fork, I don't know if that's something you've used before.
Yep, so, absolutely. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, they're awesome. So I absolutely love my broad fork. So the function of it is to kind of poke a hole in the soil and loosen it up, instead of like people who have rototillers like on their tractor, or like a garden rototiller. What that does is that mixes things around in like a circular motion. And I think that it's important to establish your beds. It's perfectly fine to use whatever practices you want to use in your garden or on your farm or whatever it is. But I definitely used a tiller to establish my beds, to make sure that I was getting enough compost incorporated into the soil. But I'm at this point now where everything is established. So I generally like to use my broad fork by exactly what you said, is top dressing the bed with compost, whether it's composted manure or, broken down compost from your garden from yesteryear or whatever it is. And I think that's just a better, it's a better system. I've noticed my yields have improved just by doing that, instead of mixing the soil around. Touching base on what you said, is to keep your fungus friends happy and this is a rabbit hole I will try not to go down.
I gave you, this is, as I said between episodes, I said, this is, if people have hung on until the third episode, they are very,
committed.
They got this. So you take that dive.
Yeah. Okay. So it just comes down to soil health. And there are so many things in the soil that we don't even know the beginning of it. And we know a lot, but for context, it's just, they're learning now just how much we don't know and all the things that are in there. So it's best to just leave it alone. I think, I always tell people, cover your soil up, like don't turn it over if you don't have to. The soil is like the skin of the earth. And like when you cut your skin, let's say there's a cut on your arm, you don't want to like air it out and like, hey, my insides, like now you can see the sun. It's not good. It's going to cause bad things. And so I kind of view the soil as the same way, is just like cover it up and don't tear into it more than you absolutely have to, So it's kind of hard to do that because, when you're done harvesting, like you have your big broccoli plant, you just harvested it, and now you want to plant something else, like getting that root mass out of there is significant. So you may have to like dig that up, and that will cause like a big hole in the soil. But to generally add more than you're taking away from the soil is a hard thing to do, but to have that mindset of like giving back to the soil, I think is really important. And a way to do that is to not disturb it all the time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Did you, I don't know if you purposefully or just didn't think about it, but did you want to go into mycorrhizae?
I mean, we can go there.
Yeah, go for it. I think it's important for this transplanting piece and how there's symbiotic relationships there.
Right, absolutely. So there is just so many symbiotic relationships happening in the soil, and again, that we don't really know. But a big thing, and I feel like it's been trending, or maybe it's just been talked about more in the last like 5 to 7 years than like before. But there is this network of fungus, more or less, that interacts with roots on the plants and the soil. And it's this huge underground network, and you can't really see it, but there's so much communication going on in that network. And the more you leave it alone, the more it grows. And the more you go in and you turn things around, it breaks it up. And then they have to reestablish. And so this is one of the benefits of like no-till or low-till farming or gardening is when you add compost, when you top dress, so you essentially just add more to the top of your soil. You might loosely work it in, you might not. What you're doing is you're feeding the soil and you're feeding that mycorrhiza. And so instead of, like I said, going in and rearranging the house, you're just letting it be and letting it grow. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that as well, because it's such a big topic of conversation.
It is. Yeah, we could absolutely and will at some point have many episodes on mycorrhizae itself, but it I think you said it perfectly that we're learning so much right now in soil sciences and really that like as we start growing our plants and we're growing them indoors, I still use sterilized growing medium for the potting soil is what I use, but it'll be interesting over the next few years as to how much we learn as to how important having those, because mycorrhizae is a fungus, and it just lives underground in the mushrooms or fruiting body of the mycorrhizae, and they pass nutrients back and forth and help. So if you think about beans and legumes and that, there are mycorrhizae and bacteria and a whole bunch of different things, but they help with nitrogen and moving that nitrogen through the soil. And we're just learning so much. It will be really interesting to see over the next decade as to if we should be doing a lot more of inoculating the soils early and using more natural soils instead of sterile soils, and that as it goes forward. So it's just a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about like this huge underground like social network of fungus. I mean, they're chatting with trees like way far away. And to think about that, I think it's insightful stuff. The more you learn, the less you know.
It is. Yeah. We had an episode here just recently all about growing mushrooms at home. And, we hit on that a little bit. We stuck more to the mushrooms as a food source type of thing, but we went adjacent to the wonderful world that is our fungus friends. And so we'll definitely have a season in the next, year or so about that and just how much we do and don't know, and talk to experts about mycorrhizae and take a deep dive into that area. So perfect. Well, Kelsey, love, thank you so much for taking so much time and going through this with our listeners and helping them understand how to grow successfully and to fail respectably if that does happen for them. But is there anything like with seed starting and transplanting and getting these babies in the ground and growing that we haven't covered that through these 3 episodes that you want to make sure people know at all?
Do people know it all? No, I think just don't forget to enjoy the process. Like, this isn't, like I said earlier, it's not rocket surgery. You're going to make mistakes. You're working with a living organism, and just try it on for size and see what you like and what you don't. And just enjoy the process.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, our next episode we've got here for everyone is all about taking and improving and increasing the amount of seasonality on the shoulders of the season, so you can extend the growing season in the spring, extending the growing season in the fall, and we've got an awesome guest to go with that one as well. So Kelsey, thank you so much again for being here. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks again for having me. It's great.
Hey, real quick before we go, wanted to let you know as well that we have a $47 course from Minnesota Gardening that is all about seed starting. So if you didn't get enough from these 3 episodes with Kelsey and myself, you can go to minnesotagardening.com, click on courses in the main menu, and then go to join the 2022 seed starting cohort. It's a $47 course, and it's a 2-track course where we've got videos and information, everything you need to get your seed started, plus a interactive community building site as well. And so those 2 things, you can grow along with other folks and learn from what everybody else is doing and have a really great time with it. So go to minnesotagardening.com, click on courses, and you'll find the 2022 seed starting cohort.